Hello and welcome to part 2 of the special Got On Board The List. I actually got comments for the first time on YouTube. One of them was from the person who the first video was dedicated to. The second was from someone I don't know asking me if I know how to dance. Okay, well, I'm going to finish this list. This episode is going to be dedicated to Adina, mostly because she complained that she wasn't mentioned in the last episode. So, Adina, here's for you. You can stop complaining. Yes, I actually pay attention. The first book I'm actually going to show you is just to set up for the for part of 4 books that my grandfather bought me. It's not one of my favorite books. The other 3 are my favorite books, but it's part of the set. The first thing I'm going to address, though, is the fact that apparently I have an audience, which is strange but true. At least I think it's strange, and the evidence points to it being true. Okay, some people really... Okay, not touching it. Okay, so basically this is the first in the set. This is Grey's Anatomy. Grey's Anatomy, this has nothing to do with the television show. If you don't know what Grey's Anatomy is, I am very disappointed in you. Very, very. It's a medical textbook. I got it for studying. And also, it's beautifully bound. This is one of 4 books that my grandfather bought me as a gift. Next, we have, and this is actually on the list of things I love, The Complete Works of William Shakespeare. My love of Shakespeare dates back to 7th grade, where my English teacher, it appeared I was at a bit of a Dutch angle. Oh, let's try and fix that. My English teacher made us read Romeo and Juliet. Now, I had, touched on Shakespearean, literature before, but never really, read, the play. I read it, and I loved it. I loved his use of double entendres. I loved his use of comedy. I thoroughly enjoyed it, Yes, I know, I was a kid who, in high school, actually enjoyed the English class, the books given by English class, actually, Of Mice and Men, which is also on my top 10 list. I first read in 7th grade English. So that's the second, but the first book I actually like in the series. The next one is Dante's Divine Comedy. The Divine Comedy by Dante. This one deserves an episode by itself. This is a beautifully... there's so much to say about this and really just explore. This is a beautifully illustrated version. I don't know if you can actually see anything in that illustration. It's people not enjoying their stay in hell. But this deserves an episode by itself. It can be interpreted and understood on so many levels. And it's a fantastic book. Historically speaking, just... there's so many ways to interpret it and learn from it that I love it. The final book in the 4-part series is The Complete Works of Edgar Allan Poe. I love Poe. If you didn't know this before, I love Edgar Allan Poe. In fact, I know The Raven by heart. I used The Raven in part of several projects. Once upon a midnight query, while I wandered weak and weary over many quaint and curious volumes of forgotten lore. But while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door. I could go on, but then this video would last very, very long. It's a long poem, but it is my favorite poem by him. A little cliche, perhaps, but no. So this is a complete volume of both his poems and his stories, which I love both of them. I'm also a Kipling fan, but I don't have a copy of Kipling, so. Some of you may have noticed that it's actually daytime. The reason for this is that last time I tried filming, I had to go through about 8 takes before I was finally able to get the episode out, because I kept getting interrupted. Apparently, people look at my door and say, hey, you know what, now's a good time to talk to him. So I'm filming this in the middle of the day when nobody's around to try and get a good thing. Okay, another one. This one, I can say for certain, it's not just my childhood nostalgia that makes it a great book, and that is The Indian in the Cupboard. This is actually a really fun cover because of, you know. The Indian in the Cupboard is the story of a boy who gets this cupboard that if he puts something in it, a toy in it, and he locks it and then unlocks it with a special key, the toy comes to life, but the toy comes out of wherever it is in history. Meaning, so basically the first toy he does is an Indian, and so this Indian is an Indian transplanted from where he's meant to be, and there are consequences to it, and it really, I read this probably when I was 6 or 7. I mean, and I've reread it since. It's really a great book. It's by Lynn Reed Banks, but I mean, this is just a fantastic book. I would highly recommend it, even if you're an adult. I mean, it's a kids' book that gives kids the treatment that I feel kids deserve, which is basically kids can deal with, you know, harsh issues and depressing issues, and there were sequels, and I enjoyed the sequels, and yeah, there's that. The complete works of H.G. Wells. Again, H.G. Wells deserves his own episode, but I'm a huge Wells fan. It's actually a bookmark from I don't know when, but yeah, this is just a copy of H.G. Wells. Deserves its own episode, so I'm not going to go into it much. These next two are actually one, but I have them in 2 different forms, and it was actually published in 2 settings. And this is actually a graphic novel. I'm a big comic book fan. If that didn't give it away, that stack of boxes over there, all of those. Wow, it's hard to. Yeah, anyways, all of those are comics. That shelf is all comics. I like comic books. This is a graphic novel by Art Spiegelman, and it's a graphic novel that really challenges. I think this is one of the graphic novels which pushes the envelope of saying comic books are art, and that is Art Spiegelman's Maus, Part 1 and Part 2. I have it in 2 parts. I also have the Making a Mouse, and this is basically, as a Jew, you know, dealing with the Holocaust obviously is part of my heritage, but to you know, looking at this objectively, I mean, it's a fantastic piece of work. I mean, the art, the everything, the storytelling, every part of this works, and I think also it deserves an episode by itself. I think everything I'm going through here deserves an episode by itself. But definitely a fantastic book. Fantastic graphic novel. I know a lot of people get angry when you use the term comic book, but you know. Wow, there's a big pile still waiting. Okay, the next one is a play, and it's a short one, and it is Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. Samuel Beckett is Mark Twain, in case you were wondering. No, it's his real name as opposed to his pen name, Mark Twain, but yeah. Waiting for Godot is a excellent play. Yeah, that's seriously all I'm going to say about it. I mean, you know, I'm not a theater reviewer, so I've never seen the play, but I love the thing. Next one was recently made into a movie I actually thoroughly enjoyed. I really did enjoy, and that is F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. If you don't know the story of Gatsby, it's the story of takes place in the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties, as they were called. Has a bunch of really interesting characters and just tells a very good story. The movie also I would recommend. I mean, Say it with me now. The book is better than the movie, but the movie in itself is very good. Alright, this one, its brother book, its companion book has been on a lot of top 10 lists, but this one actually, I preferred the companion book rather than the original book, and that is Ender's Shadow by Orson Scott Card. I liked Ender's Shadow more than I liked Ender's Game, personally because I related to the character more than I related to Ender. Ender was this goody, he was more or less a good character. Bean, Ender's Shadow follows the story of Bean through Battle School, taking place during the same time as Ender's Game. And I related to Bean much more than to Ender, and it's also very enjoyable. It's about, where he comes from, where did you come from, where did you go, Cotton Eye Joe. I forgot the rest of the lyrics, so I'm just gonna, okay, I'm stopping to embarrass myself. Put that back on the shelf. I Am Legend. The movie, which has nothing to do with the book, is excellent. I love the movie. The movie actually is one of my preferred movies. This is by Richard Matheson, and this is a copy which also has a bunch of his short stories, one of which, Dance of the Dead is one of my favorite, and, where is it? Fantastic short story, I don't remember what it was called. Prey. That was what it was called. So good. Excellent short story, but, the original I Am Legend actually deals with vampires as opposed to the movie version where it deals with ghouls. This was also, it takes place in the 50s. Things are much, kind of the mindset's much different. But I would highly recommend reading the book simply for the value of the book. And it also gives you much better understanding of why the book's called I Am Legend, why the title of the story is I Am Legend. I think, the movie, which had almost nothing to do, was Last Man on Earth type thing with the character, but it really had very, very little to do with the book. So I would suggest, actually, if you can, getting a copy of the book. I'm not sure if it's public domain, which may mean you can buy it on, which you can freely download it. But I would definitely pick it up. There was another short story by him called, I think, Buried Talents, which also was like 2.5 pages, but really, really, hits the nail on the head, which I would also really recommend. More books. Surprise! This one was made into a miniseries, a good miniseries, which I would recommend, but you can say it with me again. The book is better than the movie. This is Shogun by James Clavell. This follows the story of a young English captain called James Blackthorne. I haven't read the book in a while. Who is shipwrecked during the 17th century on Japan. Now, for those of you who may know Japanese history or may not know Japanese history, this is a great introduction to it. The book's great. It tells a great story. It really introduces you into Japanese culture and gives you that kind of outsider's perspective into Japanese culture, because I think, because Japan is so separated from the rest of the world on its own island, and really it has its own history and culture and everything, it's often misunderstood or mocked or portrayed it wrong. There's these SNL skits where they go with the or we have this strict image of the samurai, and this is a great way to get a good grip on the historical aspect. So I would highly recommend it, and the miniseries, which I would also recommend, really good. Actually have it. I don't have a hard copy of it. I've got it on my computer. It's a fantastic miniseries. So that's this one. Another one of my top 10s. Not all of my top 10s are going to be on this list. I'm not sure exactly why this is one of my favorites. I know it's one of my favorites because it's fantastically well written, and I mean, that's unarguable. Why it means so much to me is really kind of a hard question to answer, and I would do its own episode on it. 1984 by George Orwell. As a repentant liberal, this book is kind of, meaningful to me on that level. I'm a pretty conservative guy. I used to be very, very liberal, very belief in, kind of the ideas of liberalism and democracy. And after a certain point, I kind of realized that, I don't want to get into politics now. But that's 1984 by George Orwell, which is one of my favorite books. This is not one of my top 10 books, but it is one of the books that I do love dearly. The Odyssey by Homer. It's the Odyssey. It tells the story of Odysseus, classic Greek myth. I've always been a fan of classic Greek myth, so really not much more to say. If somebody feels the need, I'll do an episode on it. Okay, moving on. Okay, this is the only time you're going to hear me say the movies are better than the books. Star Wars, A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. This is the only time you will ever hear me say the movies are better than the books. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. The books were written after the movies, and maybe that's why I like them less. But the point is, only exception to the rule. Don't expect to hear it from me again. We're getting near the bottom of our list. In fact, only either 1 or 11 things to go. And that is... now I fell out of the chair there. The Martian Chronicles by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is a box set that belonged to my father. It's pretty old, but The Martian Chronicles came out either at the turn of the 20th century or at the end of the 18th century. I'm not sure when it was published. I know it was published in a magazine, probably around 1895. So it's science fiction from 1895. I'm actually going to cover the cover because it's not quite appropriate, but it's Edgar Rice Burroughs, who you may know as the creator of Tarzan. And these 11 books are fantastic science fiction. It's also very interesting to look at them from, again, make an episode about this, look at them from a perspective of historically, what was going on at the time and why it's such good science fiction. I think, medieval science fiction has become modern fiction, so, there's a whole argument there. Anyways, that has been part 2. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to stop here, and, yeah, take care.